Our story begins in 32 BBY, just before the events of Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. A 14-year-old Padme Naberrie, known to the public as Amidala, is elected Queen of Naboo. Captain Panaka of the Royal Naboo Security Forces had been tasked with protecting the candidate, and now serves as her security advisor. In preparation for her inevitable victory, Panaka interviewed a young music student named Tsabinn, who bore a striking resemblance to Padme, to potentially serve as her handmaiden and her decoy. Tsabinn eventually accepted the offer and soon met with the Queen. Padme and Tsabinn's friendship grew in the early days of their partnership, and the two decided to task Panaka with finding more handmaidens to join them, allowing them to switch places easily without their cover being blown. Panaka introduces her to his selection of handmaidens. The group decides to rename themselves to aid in their interchangeability. Tsabinn being renamed Sabe, Rabe, a former art forger, Eirtae, an engineer, Yane, a seamstress, and Sache. Well, Panaka couldn't exactly identify what her skill was, but he believed her to be a valuable member of the team. The Queen and her team got to work, each taking on various roles and learning how to double as the Queen, crafting a persona for Amidala that would allow each of them to fill the Queen's role, if asked to do so. After some complications attempting to trade with other planets, Padme thought it best for Naboo to hold a summit to try and mend relationships with the other worlds in their sector. The previous Queen had severely neglected interplanetary relations, and Padme was dead set on correcting this. Planetary representatives arrive to Naboo, and Sabe begins a flirtatious relationship with one of them, a girl around the handmaiden's age, Harley Joffin. Harley invites Sabe and the other handmaidens to a concert, a proposition Captain Panaka would likely put an end to, if he were to find out. Padme jumped at the chance to escape the royal palace for a brief time, and decided to join the girls, not as the Queen, but disguised as a handmaiden. The group snuck out of the palace, and things seemed to be going smoothly, outside of the fact that Padme had been covered in glittery chemicals that refused to come off. Panaka soon learned of Padme and the handmaidens' eventful night out, causing their fun to end early. The next day, the summit was to continue with very important governmental business, in an attempt to conceal Padme's identity and her outing the night before. The handmaidens tried their best to remove the glittery chemicals that still covered her. To no luck, Padme thought it best for Sabe to step into the role of Queen for the remainder of the day. Nervously, she agreed. Padme watched the proceedings from afar, disguising herself again as a handmaiden. Fortunately, the deception worked, but unfortunately, worked well enough that Harley had thought Padme to be Sabe. Harley attempted to kiss who she thought was Sabe, and Padme rudely refused and removed herself from the situation to conceal her identity. Sabe subsequently received a letter from Harley, expressing her anger for how the earlier situation was handled. Regardless of Padme's explanations and apologies, Sabe refused to forgive her for ruining the budding relationship. As the summit came to a close and the delegates began leaving Naboo, Captain Panaka noticed some suspicious activity above the world's surface. It wasn't long until a holo-transmission came through from the Trade Federation's viceroy, Newt Gunray, demanding Padme sign a one-sided treaty. She refused their proposition. In retaliation, the Trade Federation sent a fleet to Naboo, creating a blockade of the entire planet. Padme contacts a senator from Naboo, Sheev Palpatine, and informs him of the situation, asking for Republic mediation. A week goes by as Padme and government officials try to devise a plan to defend their world, as Naboo had little military forces. The Trade Federation's blockade caused the planet's resources to severely deplete, creating a limited supply of food for its citizens. This matter needed to be resolved as soon as possible. The Trade Federation began an invasion of Naboo, landing their ships and deploying their droid army. This caused great concern for Padme's safety. Sabe, putting her issues with the Queen aside, decided to switch places with her in hopes of potentially prolonging Padme's life. Thankfully, ambassadors to the Republic Chancellor, Jedi Qui-Gon Jinn, and his Padawan, Obi-Wan Kenobi, arrive to the palace and rescue the Queen and several of her associates, while being aided by a Gungan, Jar Jar Binks. Most of the group is able to escape the planet and the blockade on a starship, but due to limited space, Sache and Yane remain on Naboo, being incarcerated in a makeshift Trade Federation prison camp. The two handmaidens begin to work on a way to relay messages, secret from their captors, knitting messages into fabric only recognizable to Naboo citizens. The escaped starship, however, began to experience hyperdrive issues, causing them to be stuck in the Outer Rim, on the planet Tatooine. Padme, still secretly disguised as a handmaiden, aids the Jedi in locating replacement parts. They're able to obtain the parts required from the help of a young slave, Anakin Skywalker. The group, along with their new friend Anakin, make their way to Coruscant to ask for Republic aid. When members of the Republic Senate refuse, Padme pushes to have the Chancellor replaced, ultimately by the senator from Naboo, Palpatine, who ensured aid would be provided to his homeworld. Back in the prison camp, Sache is apprehended by guards and accused of aiding in the passing of secret messages. A code word is transmitted to Padme, but Sache is unfortunately tortured for information by the Trade Federation. She refuses to give up any information and is eventually released back to the general population of the prison camp. Returning to Naboo, Padme and Sabe talk through their differences and ultimately craft a speech that Sabe, disguised as the Queen, would give to the Gungan people, asking for their aid in defeating the Trade Federation. While giving that speech, Padme interrupted Sabe, revealing herself to be Queen. Sabe thought she had performed poorly, causing this interruption. But Padme explained to her the importance of being truthful to the Gungan people, in that the actual Queen was the only one capable of doing so. Meanwhile, Captain Panaka sneaks into the Trade Federation prison camp to sneak out the handmaidens and other Naboo citizens he could utilize in an oncoming assault. At the same time, Sith apprentice Darth Maul examines the royal palace, plotting and planning his own assault against Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan. The Battle of Naboo soon gets underway, with an aerial assault on the blockade of command ships and a ground assault led by the Gungans on the Trade Federation's droid army. At the same time, Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan fight off their Sith attacker, and Padme, Panaka, and Sabe try to regain the palace's throne room. Padme and Panaka are captured by droids and brought to the Viceroy of the Trade Federation, Nute Gunray. But thankfully, due to the confusion of the Queen's double, Sabe appeared and was able to turn his attention to her, allowing Padme and Panaka to use weapons hidden in the Queen's throne to overpower the Trade Federation officials. The battle soon came to a close. Many Naboo lives were lost, as well as that of Jedi Qui-Gon Jinn's. The defeated droid army was repurposed into a variety of ways to rebuild Naboo, as well as create art. Padme mourns her fallen citizens and attends the funeral of the Jedi who had given his life to her planet's cause. Hope had been restored to her and her homeworld.